Throughout this series, we've heard from people in all different areas of disability advocacy, and every single one of those areas was affected in some way by the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, the negatives and setbacks brought about by the pandemic were often even more significant for people with disabilities than most.
And what the pandemic showed was how heightened and sensitive to the lack of broadband was to someone's ability to be both professionally and personally successful. Suddenly, you saw this rapid behavior shift of doing things in a certain way, and then the next day, you have to completely shift the way you operate and think through life.
Because of the pandemic, I think we lost 30 years of rights. We lost, and we need to regain the ground we've lost during the pandemic. People with disabilities were treated terribly. The isolation, the marginalization, the lack of support for children and adults was incredible.
However, the silver lining of the pandemic is that people with IDD have been granted new ways to meaningfully engage with their communities.
And so I think we saw an increase of accessibility with COVID-19 with the virtual participation. My disability is a chronic illness that prevents my body from producing energy. So the idea of traveling to work or traveling to a social event, I'm using energy that I could be using to participate fully in that event. Having that virtual option allows you to work with your body a little bit more fluidly and with a little bit more flexibility.
Progress is being made to raise the quality of daily life for people with disabilities. For example, classrooms are making use of technology to increase accessibility for all students.
It's opened the abilities for gaps to be seen, gaps in education, gaps in technology. On top of that, those gaps have been shown, but we're doing something about it. That's the important thing. Because now, like I said, I'm in several meetings with on Zoom calls that I otherwise would have never been able to access.
And this doesn't stop at grade school classrooms. The National Leadership Training Program Partners in Policymaking has adjusted its curriculum to include more digital materials.
We've learned to put some attention to our universal design approach by default. So with universal design, a universal approach is taking the opportunity to look at the various learning styles. And it took a minute to make sure that those things were in place. Of course, everyone went to the Zoom format, and we were no different when we started back. But what we were also able to add was recording sessions, and where we can play back learn. When partners go back into person, do we get rid of video recordings? No. Do we get rid of the virtual classroom? No. These become added components and bonus components.
New opportunities for people with disabilities to enter the workforce have also appeared as a result of the pandemic.
Since COVID, we've had a tremendous amount of additional jobs where employers needed to hire people. And so we're seeing an increase in hiring in general. I can tell you that there is no type of employment for people with disabilities. That I am continue to be amazed by the types of jobs that are out there. And the more that I look at jobs, there's always something that, a new job that I discover or some new training program that they could be involved in.
And the silver linings don't stop at daily life. People in the disability community are now able to connect with their government representatives and affect policymaking with much more ease.
In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been some pretty interesting case law. And essentially what it's done is kind of expanded the term disability, the definition of that term, and then also placed kind of a greater responsibility on employers and businesses to provide accommodations for people with disability.
People with developmental disabilities have capacity and capability and competency to use all of this technology to their benefit. It was being able to, participate more broadly in virtual hearings, policy making. So if councils funded initiatives to give people access to technology, whether it be the device itself, broadband, just, getting people hooked up and letting them experience inclusion on the worldwide stage here with internet and global access. It was really quite surprising, I think, to folks.
So, what does this mean for the future of disability rights and the rights of everybody?
This is how self-advocates are born. This is how advocates for people with disabilities are born into the system. When I say born, it's like a new light that clicks on for somebody. You know, it's like a regeneration.
There's no better time to become an advocate than right now. And for those who are already involved in advocacy, let's keep up the momentum. People with disabilities are uniquely positioned to become leaders right now. You understand the need for accessibility, and you're used to overcoming these obstacles. Now, everybody else needs help catching up to you.
It's great to have the conversations within the disability community, but being able to reach outside of self and tap into HR professionals and business owners and people who can actually do the work in concert with advocates is really important in this work.
I can remember being in an advocacy meeting back in Louisiana, and I said, what we're talking about, we're talking to each other. What we need to do is get out there and talk to people who don't know about people with disabilities.
The COVID-19 pandemic was devastating to the entire world, but there's nothing saying that the world can't bounce back stronger, and the disability community might just be leading that charge.
My advocacy work gave me the opportunity to speak to legislators on state and federal levels. I advocate for inclusion of all people to improve quality of life. Everyone can succeed. It just takes a lot of determination and support.